everybody, it's Lori again, and welcome back to my kitchen. Hey, today I'm going to let you inside my head just a little bit. I know it's a really scary place sometimes, but sometimes it can be a really wonderful place too. So I'll tell you where I'm going with all of this. I got to thinking about the shipping issues that a lot of us are seeing in the grocery stores. You go into the grocery store and you're looking for specific products, and they're not necessarily always available to us anymore. And so, along with all of our staples, I was thinking, what are some of the just fun comfort foods that we enjoy in our home? And homemade banana bread came to mind. And so I started thinking about, how should I preserve bananas if I can't buy them in the grocery store easily? How should I preserve bananas so that I can in the future make banana bread? And at one point in time, I dehydrated a lot of bananas and I made banana chips. And you know, banana chips are really tasty little snacks. But I went ahead and I dehydrated them to the crisp stage, and then I tried powdering them, and it did not work very well, even though they were very, very dry. And to the crisp stage, when I went to powder them, it just tended to get gummy. And so I knew that that wasn't going to be a method of preservation long term to make banana bread with. And so I started thinking about other options. Now, we all know that we can go ahead and we can freeze bananas. We are all guilty of this. I know you're all as guilty as I am. You've got these overripe bananas on the counter, and you're thinking, oh, I've got to make some banana bread with that, or banana cake, or whatever, and you just don't get to it. So what do? You peel those bananas, you shove them in a Ziploc bag, and then you shove those dead bananas in the freezer. I'll get back to those another day, and then you forget about them, right? I probably have 50 dead bananas somewhere in my freezer at this point in time. But anyway, also in my life, I am trying to move away from my reliance on the freezers. I kind of keep in my mind that electrical interruptions, loss of power, might be a thing that some or many of us may face in the future. And so I'm trying to move away from freezing things. I want to make as much as I can shelf stable in my home. So where I'm going with this is, I've seen a recipe for a long time called monkey butter. Monkey butter is, y'all know what apple butter is, and pumpkin butter, and rhubarb butter, and all those sweet spreads or butters. This is a banana butter, okay? Monkey butter is banana butter. And so it's just this thick, sweet, wonderful spread type thing. And I thought, wow, I wonder if I could modify that recipe so that I could use that monkey butter as a replacement to fresh mashed bananas in a banana bread recipe. So I started experimenting, and I started kind of modifying the recipe, and I've come up with something that I'm really super happy with, and it works perfectly in banana bread. Now, the banana bread recipe that I normally use is from my old Betty Crocker cookbook. It's a nut bread recipe that has a modification on how to make banana bread out of the nut bread recipe. And my book, I received this as a wedding gift 37 years ago, and it's well loved. I love my Betty Crocker book. This is a treasure to me. But you use whatever recipe that you normally do for banana bread. My recipe calls for 1.5 cups of mashed bananas. And so in a pint jar, of course, you have 2 cups. You can measure out the 1.5 cups, or you can just throw the whole pint in there. 2 cups of mashed bananas isn't going to make a difference in your recipe. Not at all. But anyway, so I'm using this modified monkey butter recipe to make banana bread. We also use it on top of like peanut butter sandwiches. You can use it to top pancakes with. You can put it on ice cream. It's just really delicious stuff. So in my modifications, most recipes call for coconut, and you can add coconut if you wish to. That's absolutely fine. I personally am making the choice not to do that because I intend to mostly use this in the application of making banana bread. And the coconut to me would be overpowering the flavor of the bananas. And so I chose to omit the coconut altogether. Another thing that I noticed in all of the recipes that I tried, absolutely obscene amounts of sugar were called for. It doesn't need that much sugar. Ripe bananas are very, very sweet. Ripe pineapple is very sweet. So I cut the majority of the sugar out of the recipe because it just didn't need it. And when I had made the original recipe and tried it in banana bread, it was just so super sweet because you also add sugar, of course, when you're making your banana bread recipe. Now, you could modify and maybe cut the sugar back in your banana bread recipe if you add the full amount of sugar. But today I'm going to share my modified recipe of monkey butter with you that has reduced sugar. And I still find that it is more than sweet enough. It is plenty sweet. So my modified recipe of monkey butter is 12 large bananas. Now, if you have smaller bananas, you can, of course, increase the amount or the number of bananas that you put into your recipe. I use 12 large bananas. When they're smaller bananas, I'll maybe use 14 or 15 bananas. This isn't really something that you have to be worried about exact measurements as far as the bananas are concerned. So 12 large ripe bananas. Now, ripe bananas, of course, have a more potent banana taste over green and unripe bananas. So ripe bananas, okay? And then you can either go out and purchase crushed pineapple from your grocery store. You'd want 2 20-ounce cans of crushed pineapple and the juice. Or if you can pineapple at home, use a quart of crushed pineapple and juice or 2 pints of pineapple and juice. Those are all equal measurements. Now, if you don't have crushed pineapple, but like me, I do can crushed pineapple also, but right now all I have on hand is I have chunked pineapple. Chunked pineapple works just as well because you're eventually going to kind of emulsify this either in your blender or with a stick blender, and that'll munch up all of those little chunks of pineapple. So chunked pineapple works absolutely fine too. Then 6 tablespoons of lemon juice, and I have reduced the sugar down to only 2 cups for this whole mess of fruit, only 2 cups. And like I said, it is still plenty sweet. So I will show you how I make this modified version of monkey butter so that later on down the road I can use that in my banana bread recipes. So for now, I've peeled all of my bananas. Now, your banana peels are actually really useful things. You don't have to just dispose of them. You can cover those with water and boil them. I can't tell you that it tastes really good. It's not a very tasty thing, but you can boil those bananas, those banana peels, and that water that you would take off after boiling the banana peels can be used as a sleep aid. You drink a little bit of this each day and it helps you sleep. Another thing you can do is you can boil those banana peels in water and use that water after it cools, obviously, to water your house plants or your garden plants. It's very, very good for them. So don't waste those banana peels. They have a use also. So that's just a little tip for you. So, okay, I'm going to tip down here so you can see what I'm doing. I have my bananas in a big old pot, and I have 2 pints of home canned, maybe we need to go down a little bit more here, guys. I have 2 pints of home canned pineapple, and I'm going to dump the pineapple and the juice in there. See if I can find an edge. There we go. So 2 quarts, or like I said, 2 20-ounce cans from the store, or 1 full quart of pineapple. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add 6 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now, 4 tablespoons equals 1/4 cup. So I'm going to do my 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons, and then another half of that for 6 tablespoons. that increases your acidity level just a little bit. So that's an important thing. And then I'm going to take my, oh, you know what? I didn't get it. I'm going to be right back in just a second. Okay guys, I try really hard to have all of my tools close and at hand when I'm trying to make my videos, but I do once in a while, I forget something. So what I do after I've added my bananas and my pineapple and my lemon juice, I just take a good old-fashioned potato masher and I just kind of mash that up. I just try to get the real large chunks kind of taken care of with my hand masher. All right, we're going to call that good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, if you have one of these handy dandy stick blenders or immersion blenders, go ahead and just emulsify that in your pot. Now, if you don't have one of these stick blenders, you can take this mixture at this point in time and you can put it in your regular blender and emulsify it in your regular blender. So I'm going to just take and I'll just emulsify for a couple of minutes. Okay, I'm going to stop the camera and finish doing this and I'll be right back. All right, so I'm back and you can see that that is really nice and emulsified. It's all blended up. Now, if you want a few little chunks of pineapple in there, that's your choice and that's absolutely fine. But I prefer to have just a really smooth mixture because, like I said, this is going into banana bread and I don't want anybody like biting into a large piece of pineapple in it. So now at this point in time, I am going to only add 2 cups of sugar to this recipe. And you mix that up really well. And the next crucial step is boiling this mixture for 15 minutes, okay? Now, it's extremely, extremely important that you boil this on your stovetop for 15 minutes because if you don't cook it that long, you go ahead and you jar your monkey butter. If your bananas have not cooked that long, they're going to expand a lot and you are going to have overflow issues from your jars. You will have a mess in your canner and you will have all of your jars just not sealing. So it's very important to cook this for 15 minutes. So over medium heat, I am going to bring this to a boil and boil this, stirring it constantly. Make sure that you stir it constantly for this entire time of cooking on your stovetop because it will scorch and burn to the bottom of the pan. And you don't want that to happen. It will flavor your whole monkey butter. So make sure that you're stirring all the time and cook it for the full 15 minutes at a boil. Okay? So after 15 minutes of cooking this and boiling it, I will be back and show you how I put it in the jars. Oh, you know what? Before I go, I'm also, while I'm cooking my banana butter on the stovetop, I'm going to be heating up my canner. This requires a 15-minute hot water bath or steam can. I'm going to steam can today. I steam can almost all of my hot water bath things. It's just what I prefer to do. So I'm going to get my canner good and hot because these jars, the monkey butter is going to be hot, the jars are going to be hot, you want to put them into a hot canner. So I'm going to heat my canner up while I'm cooking the monkey butter down on the stovetop. So we'll be back in 15 minutes after I get this cooked down. Alright guys, I'm back and I am just about done with my 15-minute boil. Now I brought this to a boil, I constantly stirred and did a low boil for 15 minutes over medium heat. Now you don't have to have this thing frantically boiling. Just like jelly, this banana butter or monkey butter is just like molten lava when you are cooking it. So if you have it boiling so hard that it is splattering out Sorry, let me turn my timer off. If it's splattering out at you and burning you, you're boiling it too hard, and you shouldn't have to stir very fast at all. If you feel like you have to stir really frantically, you're boiling it way too hard. So just turn that heat down a little bit and make it just a low, steady boil. So you can see that it's kind of gotten a little bit darker in color over the cooking period. And at one point in time, it will kind of get a little bit foamy. And then after you cook it a little bit longer, that foam kind of dissipates on its own. And that is what would happen, that foam stage is what would happen inside of your jars if you did not cook this for 15 minutes before putting it in your jars and then just canning it. It would expand inside of your jar, and cause overflow issues, which would push out from underneath your lids, and then you would have a mess in your canner, like I said, and also you'd have a whole lot of unsealed jars. Now, I have my canner heated up. Since you are working with hot product, you should technically have hot jars. Now, you could have warmed up your jars inside your canner along with your canner, or you can put these into a cake pan, put them into a cold oven sorry, you might as well be looking at me while I'm talking at you, huh? Otherwise, you can put your jars into a cake pan and slip them into a cold oven, and then preheat your oven to 200 or 220 degrees, and then you'll have nice hot jars so that you don't have any thermal shock. But as you all know, I'm going to stir this. It's still hot on my burner, so I don't want any burning to happen. But as you all know, I'm a pretty realistic type person, and some of us people who have been canning for years and years and years have developed our own little tricks to the trade, let's say that. So since this isn't open kettle canning where you need a completely hot sanitized jar, hot lid, hot ring, we have to actually steam bath or water bath these. I don't worry about having them sanitized in the pot, because they're going to be properly sanitized in the hot water bath or the steam canner anyway. It's a 15-minute process, so I don't worry about that. And I'll show you a little trick when I'm loading my jars. If I don't have hot jars, and now keep in mind that my kitchen right now, it's only 60 degrees, and so it's pretty cool where we're at. And you can get thermal shock when you are putting a hot product into a cold jar. You can have thermal shock. Now, one of the things you can see is that my jars are right next to, pardon me, I've got to get the phone. Okay, I'm back. Now, as you can see, I have my jars right next to the stove, and so my jars are kind of getting warmed up by the radiant heat of the stove, even though it's very cool today, 60 degrees. But I still worry about thermal shock, okay? When you're putting hot molten lava into a cold jar, that jar can break. And so I'll show you just a little trick, just from an old canner's perspective, a little trick of what I do to avoid that. So I will take my hot product and just very carefully, well, you know what, I'll leave my glove off for now. I just very carefully just do a few slow drips. Can you see that? A few slow drips into that jar. And then I'm going to leave that jar set while I do the same thing to the next jar. Just a few very slow drip drops. And what that does is that allows your jar to acclimate to the heat. Okay? So now I'm going to go back to that first one that I did a few drip drops, and you can feel the heat is radiating up from that very hot product in the bottom of the jar, and there's not very much in there. Okay, there's not even a quarter of an inch in there, but that hot product is acclimating my jar so that I'm not going to have any issues with thermal shock. And so now I'm just going to slowly, allowing that jar to acclimate, I'm going to slowly fill my jar. And for monkey butter or banana butter, whatever you want to call it, it's 1 inch headspace. So that 1 inch is about at the very, very bottom of the threads of your jar. Most jars have about a 1 inch thread area at the top of the jar. Now for me also, my funnel here is approximately 1 inch. It has a 1 inch neck. And so when I get the product to the bottom of that funnel, neck. That's where I know I'm at 1 inch. But 1 inch on your jar itself is pretty much right at the bottom of the threads. Okay, so now I've got that one filled. I'm going to get back to it. Now this one has been sitting and acclimating. I'm going to drip drop into another one and get that started warming up. Just a few very, very slow drip drops in that jar. Not a whole rushing ladle full either, just a little bit in the bottom of the jar. Now this jar has been already acclimated. I've, had it sitting in there for a minute or two, and now I feel like I can go ahead and fill my jar. I'm not going to rush it in there, just to make sure that my jar has time to adjust. But that's just one of the old tricks that I have been doing for years and years, is allowing that jar to heat up just very slowly by putting product in it. All right, another thing I forgot was a wet rag, so I'm going to be right back. All right, guys, so now I have my clean wet rag. For some reason, I'm not aimed right here. There. I've got my clean wet rag, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure to wipe the rim of the jar to make sure that none of that monkey butter got on the rim of the jar. I'm going to place my flat lid, place my ring, screw it on finger tight, and then put it into my hot canner. Okay? Wipe my rim, place my flat and my ring, finger tight, and in the canner, hot canner. All right, so let's acclimate another jar here. For some reason, I'm just not getting my angles right here on there. Hopefully you can see that. So to acclimate that cold jar, or that room temperature jar, I'm just going to take just a little bit of product and just slowly drip, drop, very slowly into that cold jar. And then I'm going to set that aside and let that acclimate and warm up with that hot product in the very bottom. I'm going to go to the one that I already had acclimating and finish filling it. You can also, like I said, you can heat your jars in your canner as it's warming up, or you can heat your jars up in the oven, just whatever you want. Whatever you want to do, whatever is easiest for you. Fill to 1 inch head space. Wipe your rim with a clean wet washcloth or a paper towel, whatever you want to use. Place your flat and your ring and into the canner. Get another one acclimating. Just a slow drip drop. Let that sit and warm up, and go back to the one that I already had acclimated. And fill it to 1 inch head space. Okay, I think I'm only going to have enough for maybe 1 more pint here and maybe a half a pint. All right, we got that filled. Wipe our rim good. Get our flat lid and our ring, and in the canner it goes. Generally with this recipe, and this will depend on how many bananas you use or the size of them, but generally with this recipe I get 5 to 6 pints. And then sometimes there's just a wee bit left over for just sticking in the fridge to eat. And I don't even know that I'm going to have a half a pint left over today, but there we go. Wipe it, cap it, band it, and into the hot canner. So I've got just a little bit left in the pan that I'm going to just very carefully get into my my half pint jar here. I had 1/2 pint thinking, yeah, if we don't have enough for a full pint, you better have a half pint jar ready. And I'm glad that I did have a half pint jar ready. And just very carefully and slowly put that in there so that, again, we do not cause thermal shock. All right. Okay, so this one now is not going to be a complete jar. You can see that I was unable to fill the whole thing. So this is just going to get capped and put in the refrigerator. It doesn't have to be processed at all. And you wouldn't want to process this. This is quite a bit of headspace. This is just too much headspace. So I'll just put my cap on it, and then after it cools, I'll stick it in the refrigerator and we'll enjoy it from there. So, alrighty. Then, what I'm going to do, my canner is filled. And I do have a video on how to use your stovetop canner, your stovetop PC, as a steam canner. So if you're interested in learning how to use your stovetop PC as a steam canner, you can look that video and that information up. But right now, I'm just going to turn this up and I'm going to steam can these pints of monkey butter for 15 minutes. So let's get that going, and I'll be back when they're done. Okay guys, so I'm almost at the end of my 15-minute steam canning period for these pints of monkey butter. So I'm just on the final countdown here. And there goes my timer. Okay, so all I'm going to do is simply shut off my burner. Now, if you would have an electric stove, the cool down period would take a little bit longer, or if you're strong enough to safely move it, you could safely move your canner off of your electric heating element. But I'm just going to allow my canner to just slow down and cool down. And this little pressure gauge that is popped up, once it drops down on its own, then I know that it's safe to unlock the canner. But until that happens, you just don't want to do anything. So we'll just give it, there it goes. It just dropped down. Now, you never want to immediately open a hot canner. You just don't want to do it. If you were pressure canning, this would take a lot longer. Today I'm only steam canning. As you can see, I never put my weight on my pressure canner. So I was not pressure canning, I was steam canning. I allowed my pressure vent to drop down, which means that there's no heavy steam pressure inside. And all I'm going to do at this point in time is just unlock my canner, okay? Just to allow it to cool down a little bit more. Now I'm going to allow it to sit here with this lid on for at least 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, then I'm going to come and I'm just going to crack the lid open a little bit more and allow it to cool longer. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as is. So I'll be back in 5 minutes. All right, I've allowed my canner to cool for approximately 5 minutes. Now this is how I do every time I can, whether it be pressure can or steam can. This is what I do. I allow it to depressurize, and then I just unlocked the lid. I did nothing but just turned it and unlocked it, and I allowed it to cool for another 5 minutes. Now I'm going to take that lid and I'm just going to slightly raise it and set it off to the side a little bit. So you can see the steam is coming out, but my lid is not really removed. It's just pushed just a little bit to the side, so it's still on there. Now the reason why I do this is because if you immediately remove that lid, it's super hot inside your canner. If you immediately remove that lid and all of your cold room air rushes in, that's what pushes your product up and out of your jars and causes siphoning. So you never want to rush this cool down period. So now that I've cracked the lid open and put it just a little bit off to the side, but it's still on there, I'll allow it to cool for another 10 minutes before I feel like it's safe to remove the lid completely, and then I won't have any siphoning of my product. So we'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been a little bit over 10 minutes. I mean, my canner is still pretty hot, but it's been over 10 minutes. I went out to the garden and kind of got a little distracted. I had one of those squirrel moments. But anyway, Allow your canner to cool, with your lid cracked to the side for at least another 10 minutes before you remove that lid. And then you kind of reduce the chance of siphoning occurring, because like I said, if you remove that canner lid right away and all of that cold air rushes into your hot canner and your hot jars, it sometimes can push and suck the food out of the jars, causing siphoning. And so if you allow it to cool a little bit longer, then you don't have those issues. So then you can go ahead and just remove your jars from the canner and allow them to cool. Now I can already tell that in the cooling process, I can tell all of my lids have sealed already. So that's fantastic. All right, so I'm going to show you, let's see here, get our camera up a little bit more. I'm going to show you a jar that's already been previously processed. Okay, I'm sorry my lighting sometimes gets a little strange in this corner here by my stove, but I want to show you what this banana butter is like. I want to show you how thick it is. If you can see that, look at how thick and rich and wonderful. There we go. And so this, like I said, I use this in place of fresh mashed bananas in banana bread now, and I just think it's a wonderful thing to have on your shelf, and it's delicious. So very good. So yummy. I just use this in replacement of my fresh mashed bananas in banana bread. Now, I know that a lot of us do canning for a whole lot of different reasons. There are staples and necessities that you need to have in storage. We all have nutritional needs. Protein and vegetables being very important, calcium being important. But, if you think about things, it's nice to have some fun items on your shelf too. If times get really rough, yeah, we've got to have those things to survive. But you know what? I think it's going to be awfully nice to have fun items on your shelves too. Something that you can make something special out of for your family to bring comfort and just a bit of enjoyment. And so that is my intention in modifying this recipe, and that is my intention for use. Of course, it's still going to be wonderful over the top of ice cream or on top of pancakes or even made into muffins or banana cake or, whatever. This has so many uses. So I hope that you found all of the information good and informative and useful, and I hope that you can put it to use in your own homes. Until I see you again, happy canning, everybody.